So Dash has decided to come and get involved in this video. In my last video, I told you a little bit about how I discovered QHHT because of my phobia. In this video, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my actual first QHHT session, and that's important because that session was the beginning of me obviously discovering QHHT, and it was the beginning of me finding my purpose. It was the beginning of the journey that I've now been on for the past 4 years. So within that QHHT session, what I experienced was 3 past lives which offered me the understanding as to why I had been struggling with 3 particular areas of my life. The first was that I had had all of my life an obsessive compulsive disorder around dirt in my environment, which made life very difficult. The second life which I was offered helped me to have an understanding of why I had the phobia of having my skin cut. And the third life was a life which offered me an understanding around why I had ME and a real desire to constantly be active, which is what people with ME do struggle with slowing down. So within my QHHT session, the first life that I was offered, the first past life that I experienced, was that of a primitive male. And when I dropped into this life, I dropped into myself in a community, living in a mud hut where there was a lot of dirt around. When I looked down at my legs, I was this male and I was covered in mud. My hands were dirty. I lived in this mud hut which was dirty. And I was very confused about why no one else in my community found this to be a problem. And as that soul in that experience, I was learning about living in that particular way, but I wasn't enjoying the soul journey. I wasn't enjoying that life at all. And what had happened is that because I hadn't come to terms with the fact that that was an experience that I had to go through, the emotional attachment to not enjoying that life, living in dirt and mud, had remained as a residue energy within my field of existence. And that non-acceptance of that way of living had become a burden to me and had created my obsessive compulsive disorder around dirt. So just going back and experiencing that life, as always happens in QHHT, we release the emotional attachment and then the struggles are no longer part of our life. The second life which I experienced, which was the most powerful of all, was when I was a beautiful seabird. These beautiful white wings, and in this part of the regression I dropped into a scene where I was flying over a frozen ocean as this beautiful seabird, enjoying the freedom. But in this particular scene, I was looking down over the ocean and I saw a native man dressed in furs fishing by a hole, and next to this hole he had a big pile of fish. And as a seabird, I made a choice to fly over and to investigate what this human being was doing. In my mind, I wasn't deciding to go and eat his fish, But in his mind, he decided that that was exactly what I was going to do. And so I was threatening his food source. And so what happened was, as a seabird, I flew down, I settled next to this hole in the ice, and he immediately turned round and hacked me to death with an ice pick. So that sounds traumatic, right? What happens in QHHT is if you come into a scene where there is going to be physical pain, you watch the scene as an observer. So that was exactly what I was encouraged to do by the practitioner. I could view this as an observer, and I watched as my whole side of my body was hacked open. My skin was open, and there was a huge wound which had been created by this metal sharp object. And again, as I explained with the first life, when we go through something in a previous journey which has left us non-accepting of the experience that we've gone through, then the emotional attachment remains within our field of consciousness, within our energetic being, and it can create residue feelings. So this particular life was the life which had created the phobia for me in my current life around being scared of having my skin cut, and in particular metal objects which do exactly that. So again, I got an understanding of why I was shown that life. The third life that I was shown, I was an amazing dragonfly, and I had these beautiful wings. But as a dragonfly, I didn't get an opportunity to rest. Dragonflies have very short lives, and they have a lot to do within that time frame. And so I didn't rest. I was constantly on the move, I was constantly active, and I died in that life sitting on a lily pad and just slowing right down because I had no energy left. I had no energy left in my body. I'd lived my life, I'd done my breeding, I'd laid my eggs, and that was the end of my life. And that life was the one which had been creating the need for active movement in my current life. So these three lives, being shown them, helped me to release the three struggles that I'd taken to the session with me. The struggle around obsessive compulsive disorder of dirt, which was the primitive life. The second was my life as the seabird, which had created the phobia around having my skin cut. And the third life was the answer to why I had always remained active in this life, why I couldn't settle and had created ME. So going through that QHHT session and being able to speak with the subconscious and to receive all of the answers as to how these particular three lives had been having an effect on my current life now, gave me all of the understanding that I needed in order to release those struggles from my life. So as you can imagine, I was mind blown. So after that session, everything changed for me. I started to feel very different, and the struggles that I'd gone to the session with started to be released from my life. Now I no longer have those struggles, not in the same way, not to the same degree at all. And so I knew in that moment when I received my answers that QHHT was the only thing that had ever offered me the understanding that I'd been looking for. For 46 years of my life, I'd been struggling with these particular things, and no amount of psychotherapy, no amount of other modalities, other work had actually helped. And so I knew in that moment that QHHT was something that I needed to study. It was a technique that I wanted to practice, and it was a therapy that I wanted to bring to my local community, to people who were struggling in similar ways. So that's really the beginning of my QHHT journey. I'm going to share with you in my next video a little bit more about what I've learnt since that session, and a little bit more about the other lives that I've also discovered, the other parts of my soul journey which have had a huge impact and which helped me to carry out my work as a QHHT practitioner today. So I hope you found that one interesting. I know it's a little bit left field, but I hope that you've enjoyed it, and I'm sending you all lots of love.